Today we're going to talk about the timeline widget. We're going to do an overview of the widget. We're going to talk about case versus grid timelines, the timeline interaction, and timeline date order. So let's hop into the tool and open up our timeline widget. For the timeline widget to be useful, you must be logged into a case. I'm logged into this test add case. And you can immediately see within the timeline widget there are two timelines. There's a case timeline and a grid timeline. The case timeline obviously plots all the data in the case, and the grid only what's in the grid at that given moment. So I believe there are about 100 records in the grid, and you can see they're plotted here. In the case timeline, what is being plotted specifically, let's go into the facets, and you can see. We'll go down into files and date modified. This is a visual representation of what is in this facet. And you can even see that, let's say I want to look deeper into this area, 2007. If I click on that to expand it, you'll see that this facet just got a little arrow next to it. And now if I drill down, if I do something like this, I'm doing that with Shift, by the way, you can see I can get much more detail than was available just in that higher level 2007. Now I can see all the different months of 2007. And if I drill in again, you can see none of these are clicked into, but if I think, hey, July is particularly interesting, or at least this pillar is, and I click on that, that goes ahead and expands the June, July, and August. Then again, and you can see actually, so some of them have already, if I drill in again, you can see all that data plotted here. So if I open this, you could see similar type numbers. I believe this is the, okay, 350 right in there, 146. You can see the different amounts. So in any event, that's how this timeline works. You can, of course, filter dates when you decide, okay, this is an interesting interesting subset of the data. I want to go ahead and filter to that. You just click that and it will go ahead and apply all those facets. And your data set gets reduced. What's in the grid gets reduced by the data represented in this timeline graph. So if we open the grid, you can see that there are 760 items, which if we then went and compared it to our facet would be the right count of the items represented by this date range. So let's go clear out of all of that. Let's go remove our filter. And you can see our grid, our timeline, case timeline expands back out. Now we can come back into the grid timeline. And again, let's go into the grid and see this is the data represented by the 100 records in here. If we wanted to include more records, let's say we hit 1,000 here, well, 1,000 would be plotted. Let's just increase it to 500 though. So we can see we now got 500 pulled in and the timeline shifted a little bit, changed around. Now let's talk about how you use this thing and what these group containers are. This graphic is very sensitive to this control, if you will, is very sensitive to the number of entities in it. If you had, let's say, really over a couple hundred, the graphic becomes very slow and unresponsive. So don't do that. And the tool works to prevent that using this viewing size and this cluster by dynamic. So what we've said is we only want the viewing size to include 20 buckets. And I believe there are probably a few more than 20 here. But what the widget does, what the control does, is it will first try to display all the 500 we've shown. And then it says, oh my gosh, this is more than the 20 you've asked for. And so I'm going to try to group by exact time. And then it will count them up and see if it's more than the 20. It will try by day, week, and month. Ultimately, it will quit on month. But it will group by month until it's got down to as minimal number of containers as it can, given what you've specified here. Now, if you want to see what's in a given group, you can just go ahead and click on it, and you can see the grid will respond. And if you just click on another one, you can see that record. And if you want to unfilter, you can just click anywhere off and it will go back to normal. You can, of course, utilize the date filters up here. You can move around the grid. You can zoom in using these. And you can change the clustering. Let's say I'm happy to view 50. And I'm willing to try by week. And you can see it's been able to do it by week, but it's had to stretch up in the vertical. And now I can zoom in if I want into this sort of center area where there seem to be more. Anyway, I can move around the timeline as you might expect and alter it as you would want to utilizing these different controls. I can also export it to the report if I want to. You can explore that more in the reporting video. The last thing I want to point out is this timeline playback control and this date order. First, the playback control is something we've explored in many of the widgets. It allows you just to walk through the widget in a time-based manner. So if you click, walk through the data in a time-based manner. So if you click play, it's now going to play through each entity in the group, and you can see it's advancing, I think, once every second or 3 seconds, and you can speed it up if you want. And then you can pause it and do whatever, stop it. It's just a simple playback mode. Date order is particularly important for those of you who really want to utilize the timeline widget extensively and want to control how it looks. You can see I've got 3 different categories: communication, file, and custom. And it shows you the order in which it applies the dates. For communication, it first tries to received, then sent, then time, and various ones. Now, it may look like you say, hey, hold on, Tim, there's a received here and then another received here. Well, yeah, you really have to understand the data, because this is a received for MMS messages, and this is a sent for MMS messages, and this is a received for, actually, to be honest, I don't know off the top of my SMS messages. SMS messages. So a given object in the data will not have dates in both of these. So in fact, they're not conflicting. It is fine to apply this order to them because something that is an MMS will not have SMS data in it. So these will get ignored, and the first date it sees, which in this case would be the MMS received, will be the one it tries to apply first. If it doesn't find that one, it will go to the MMS sent, and so on and so forth. If you don't like that order, you can, of course, delete things. You can add new ones. You can create your own custom for your own type of data. If you added custom columns or whatever, and you want to be able to plot them on the timeline, you can go ahead and do that. And you can save changes. And if ultimately you've gobbledygooked it all up and want to restore to default, you can always click Restore to Default. And that will alter what's in your timeline. So that's the timeline widget. Hopefully that was helpful and you're able to get good value out of it. It's a fairly powerful widget, but it is finicky and you really need to understand it to utilize it. So thank you for the time and good luck.